All right, picture this. It's a dark, windswept evening in the incredibly isolated village of Bhairafpur. The sky is completely overcast, and the only thing you can hear is this chilling howl of the wind rushing through the broken windows of a decaying, century-old mansion. Now the villagers, they are terrified. They avoid this structure at absolutely all costs, because the second the sun dips below the horizon, these distinct, heavy footsteps begin to echo from inside its walls. Invisible footsteps. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to map out the chilling anatomy of a local legend.
Now, it's a question we've all probably asked ourselves late at night. Are ghosts just an illusion, something crafted by our own overactive imaginations? Or are some secrets truly, physically buried in the dark, just waiting to be uncovered? I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this, because the events that unfolded in Bhairafpur, they're going to challenge everything you think you know about logic and reality.
Section 1. The Cursed Mansion of Bhairafpur. So, the terror of Bhairafpur centered entirely around this crumbling ruin that the locals actively shunned. They were terrified of these unseen feet that supposedly paced the property. But you know how it is. Legends usually stay just legends until someone is brave enough, or maybe foolish enough, to actually test them. And that brings us to Rina. A simple, foolish dare basically awakened the entire terror. Rina, who was just visiting with some friends, actually laughed off the local superstitions. She declared point blank that ghosts weren't real, and she walked right into that decaying mansion, all alone with just a flashlight. As her beam swept across the broken walls, she saw a shifting shadow, a shadow that definitely wasn't hers. And then came the undeniable, slow sound of approaching footsteps in the dark.
Section 2. The Terrifying Footsteps and Victims.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the haunting didn't just stay neatly inside the mansion. It followed Rina out and escalated rapidly. It spread like wildfire. On night 1, we have Rina's shadow encounter, but by night 2, the entity was growing bolder. Raghu, the local village barber, was just walking home when he was aggressively stalked and then confronted by a terrifying white entity with glowing green eyes. It completely broke his mind. The very next day, he was seen wandering the village, just muttering to himself that the footsteps were coming for him. By night 3, the local school teacher, Master Anirudh, was stalked. And then on night 4, a woman named Savita actually had her lamp blown out and saw a whispering woman in a black sari.
And speaking of Master Anirudh, the teacher from night 3, when he was walking home, he heard these heavy, deliberate boots right behind him. He spun around to face whoever it was, but he was looking at an entirely empty street. And then a voice whispered directly into his ear, "You won't escape."
You know, the really terrifying equalizer of this curse was that it didn't discriminate at all. On one side, you have Master Anirudh, a highly educated, staunch skeptic who dismissed ghosts entirely. On the other, you have Raghu the barber, an everyday local who ended up driven completely mad by his encounter. Both of them, completely regardless of their beliefs or backgrounds, were hunted by the exact same auditory horror. The footsteps, they came for everyone.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the entity began aggressively manipulating the physical environment. It wasn't just spooky sounds anymore. Savita dealt with magically extinguished flames, and that whispering woman. A local man named Mohan tried to chant protection mantras, only to literally watch heavy iron chains start moving all on their own. And Amar, the local bus driver, he was driving a completely empty bus when he looked up into his rearview mirror and saw a faceless passenger dressed in white, telling him to just keep driving because his final destination was with him. I mean, no way, right?
The panic hit an absolute fever pitch when Mohan desperately tried to perform his peace mantras right at the mansion. As the heavy chains started rattling, a literal bloody message materialized directly on the wall right in front of him. It read, "It is impossible to escape the footsteps." Mohan naturally dropped his prayer beads and ran for his life.
Section 3. The Bloody Secret of the Basement.
So, with the village essentially paralyzed by fear, the authorities finally stepped in. They were led by a highly rational police officer, DCP Arvind. Now, Arvind? He laughed at superstitions. He arrived at the ruins totally alone at night, armed with nothing but a flashlight and cold, hard logic. But as he explored those decaying walls, the heavy footsteps began. He turned around, nothing. But then, he felt a freezing, invisible hand rest right on his shoulder.
And a disembodied voice spoke to him right there in the dark. "If you want the truth, go down to the basement." This auditory command was the major turning point. It basically forced the villagers to stop running. Led by Rina, Ankit, Master Anirudh, and DCP Arvind, they decided enough was enough. They were going to confront the source of this evil at the stroke of midnight.
Imagine pushing open this heavily rusted iron door at the back of the mansion and instantly being hit with a foul, rotting stench. They slowly descended these incredibly damp, cold stairs into the pitch black, their flashlights just barely cutting through the terrifying silence. The claustrophobia must have been intense. Down at the bottom, they found this moss-covered room with a broken platform, and right there on the wall was more of that bloody text.
As they shined their trembling lights on the wall, the group read the final, horrifying message. "This is my curse. Whoever hears it will end." And literally, right as they read those words, a white, hazy shadow materialized in the darkest corner of the basement.
So, the crucial point is the why. The ghost finally spoke and revealed her identity. Her name was Lalita, and she wasn't just some random evil spirit. She was the mansion's true owner. Exactly 100 years ago, her greedy husband betrayed her and actually buried her alive right there in that very basement. Her eternal screams and those terrifying heavy footsteps, they were just the echoes of her horrific, suffocating murder.
Section 4. The mansion's end and illusion. Because once the truth was out, the basement violently began to collapse. Dirt was falling from the ceiling, the walls were shaking, and Lalita's voice was just echoing from every single direction, promising them that her curse was infinite. The group barely managed to sprint back up those rotting stairs and escape the shaking structure with their lives.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how desperate these people were. Starving for closure, the villagers took immediate action. On DCP Arvind's direct orders, they set the entire mansion on fire, burning it completely to ashes in an attempt to finally free Lalita's trapped remains. The very next day, they conducted a massive, village-wide puja, and finally, for the first time in years, Pyropur experienced a peaceful, quiet night. The nightmare, it seemed, was finally over.
But the footsteps were still alive. You see, the physical structure was gone, sure, but the curse was tied to the sound itself.
Just a few days after the fire, Rina was studying alone in her quiet room. Suddenly, this freezing cold breeze blew in from her open window, and then, from the absolute darkest corner of her bedroom, came the slow, unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approaching her. She called out, asked who was there, but received no answer. Just the footsteps getting closer. Destroying the physical mansion didn't destroy the unseen shadow. It simply released it. Now it permanently stalks anyone who has ever heard its sound.
So, I have to ask you, have you ever heard the footsteps of an unseen shadow? The story of Bhairavpur teaches us that some echoes simply can't be burned away. If you have your own unexplained, spooky encounters, be sure to share them with us via the email in the description below. Until next time, stay curious, stay focused, and maybe, just maybe, don't listen too closely to the sounds in the dark.